I decorated the tree like I always did, baked their favorite cookies, and wrapped gifts that would never be opened. The house glowed with Christmas lights, but no one came. For the first time in 79 years, I spent Christmas completely alone. Don't miss a single beat of this story. Subscribe, like, share with someone who loves gripping stories, and drop your thoughts below. My 10 p.m. stories. One story every night at 10 p.m. My name is Shelly. I'm 79 years old. I served in the United States Senate for 18 years, fought for families, championed children's welfare, and spoke on national stages about the importance of love and togetherness. But tonight, I'm telling you about the Christmas that taught me the cruelest truth. You can pour your entire soul into loving people, and they can still walk away. This is about what happens when the ones you loved most leave you behind. Everyone knew me as Senator Shelly Ford, the woman with the steel spine and the warm smile, the one who never missed a constituent's call, who remembered names and birthdays and fought like hell for working families. What they didn't know was that every December, I transformed. The legislative battles, the committee hearings, the press conferences, they all faded away. December belonged to my children. I had three of them. Marcus, my oldest, at 52, brilliant and driven, the corporate lawyer in Manhattan. Elena, 48, sharp-tongued and fierce, running her own consulting firm in Chicago. And my baby, David, 45, the dreamer, the artist, the one who never quite found his footing, but had a heart that could fill stadiums. I raised them alone after their father died when David was 6. I built my career around them, scheduled votes around school plays, brought them to campaign rallies where they handed out buttons and learned to shake hands. Christmas was sacred. No matter what crisis erupted on Capitol Hill, I came home. I baked my mother's kolachki recipe, the one with apricot filling that took 3 days to prepare. I decorated the 12-foot spruce in our living room with ornaments we'd collected over decades. Marcus's kindergarten clay handprint, Elena's glitter-covered star, David's origami crane. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine and vanilla candles. I played Bing Crosby on the old record player because that's what my mother did, and her mother before her. Last year, none of them came home for Christmas. The realization hit me on December 23rd, when I was standing in the kitchen with flour on my hands and 3 missed calls on my phone. My hands were dusted white with flour when I saw Marcus's name flash across my phone screen for the 3rd time that morning. I wiped my palms on my apron, the red one with "World's Best Mom" embroidered on the pocket, a Mother's Day gift from Elena 15 years ago, and answered, my voice bright with anticipation. "Marcus, sweetheart, are you calling from the airport? I can pick you up if—" "Mom, I can't make it this year." His voice was clipped, efficient, the tone he used during depositions. "The firm's closing a major acquisition, and I need to be in the office through the holidays. I sent you a gift. Should arrive tomorrow." The words registered slowly, like a foreign language I was struggling to translate. "But you promised. You said after Thanksgiving that you definitely—" "I know what I said." There was an edge now, impatience crackling through the line. "Plans change. You understand that better than anyone. How many Christmases did you spend in emergency Senate sessions?" My throat tightened. "That was different. That was work. This is family." "This is work, Mom. Some of us still have careers that matter." The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to silence while the kitchen timer beeped. The kolachki were ready. My hands shook as I pulled the tray from the oven, the delicate pastries golden and perfect. I'd made Marcus's favorites, the ones with cherry filling. Elena called 30 minutes later. Her excuse was smoother, rehearsed. A leadership retreat in Aspen, mandatory, career-defining opportunity. She'd visit in March, definitely. She sounded distracted, and I heard laughter in the background, glasses clinking, music playing, a party. She was at a party while telling me she couldn't come home for Christmas. And David, David didn't even call. I walked through the house that evening, touching ornaments, straightening throw pillows, my fingers trailing over picture frames. The house had 6 bedrooms, far too large for one person, but I'd kept it after leaving the Senate. Kept it because it was ours, filled with memories of skinned knees and algebra homework and teenage arguments and college acceptances. Each bedroom was decorated for its owner. Marcus's room still had his high school debate trophies on the shelf, his Northwestern pennant on the wall. Elena's had her collection of international snow globes from every country she'd visited. David's was cluttered with half-finished canvases and stacks of poetry books. I kept them ready, always ready, as if they might walk through the door any evening and be 17 again. I stood in David's doorway, my chest tight with something I couldn't name yet. He hadn't called, hadn't texted. I'd sent him 3 messages asking about his arrival time, all marked as read, none answered. My youngest, my sensitive boy who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms, well past the age when other children stopped needing their mothers. The house was silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I counted the chimes, 7 o'clock. In previous years, by this time, we'd be making hot chocolate, arguing over which movie to watch, Marcus and Elena bickering while David played peacemaker. The absence of noise felt like a physical weight pressing on my chest. I went back to the kitchen, wrapped the kolachki in wax paper, and placed them in the freezer. They'd keep until next year. Maybe next year will be different. Maybe next year they'd come home. But somewhere deep in my bones, I already knew the truth I wasn't ready to face yet. Christmas Eve morning arrived gray and heavy with snow. I woke at 6, like always, my body trained by decades of early Senate sessions. For a moment, before I was fully conscious, I thought I heard footsteps downstairs. Elena's quick, purposeful stride or David's shuffle in those ridiculous slippers he wore. Then reality settled over me, like a cold blanket. The house was silent. I made coffee in the empty kitchen, my hands moving through the familiar ritual. 1 cup, not 4. I stared at the 3 unused mugs hanging on their hooks. Marcus's #1 mug, Elena's nevertheless she persisted, David's hand-painted ceramic monstrosity that said, "Art is life." They hadn't been used in 3 years. Not since the last Christmas we'd all been together, when Elena snapped at Marcus over politics, Marcus mocked David's latest failed art show, and I spent dinner trying to smooth everything over like always. I remembered David's face that night, how he'd excused himself early and disappeared to his room. I found him later, packing his bag. "I can't keep doing this, Mom," he'd said quietly. "Coming home just reminds me how much I've disappointed everyone." "You haven't disappointed me," I'd told him, reaching for his hand. But he pulled away. "You say that, but I see it in your eyes. You want me to be something I'm not. You want all of us to be something we're not." I hadn't understood then. I'd thought he was being dramatic, sensitive as always. Now, standing in my kitchen with my single cup of coffee, I wondered if he'd been trying to tell me something I'd been too stubborn to hear. The doorbell rang at noon. A delivery driver handed me 3 packages, 1 from Marcus, 1 from Elena, 1 from David. Gifts shipped rather than delivered in person. I carried them to the living room and placed them under the tree, next to the presents I'd wrapped for them, the ones they'd never open. That evening, I ate dinner alone. Prime rib for 1, roasted vegetables, my grandmother's yeast rolls. I set the table with the good china anyway, lit the candles, poured wine in a crystal glass. If I was going to be alone, I'd do it with dignity. But when I brought the first bite to my mouth, something inside me finally broke. I sat at that table for 2 hours, unable to eat. The food grew cold, the candles burned down to stubs, and I stared at the empty chairs around me, the chairs where my children should have been sitting, laughing, arguing, living. When did I become someone they couldn't bear to visit? The question wouldn't leave me alone. I replayed every conversation, every phone call, every tense exchange. I thought about Marcus's comment. Some of us still have careers that matter, as if my 18 years in the Senate had meant nothing, as if fighting for children's health care and education funding and family leave policies had been a waste of time. I'd missed some of his soccer games, yes, but I was trying to change the world, for him, for all of them. I thought about Alina's perpetual busyness, her clipped phone calls, the way she'd started saying, "I'll try," instead of yes when I invited her to visit, the way her voice always sounded relieved when I said goodbye, as if talking to me was an obligation she was checking off her list. And David, God, David, the silence from David was the worst because I couldn't even argue with it. He simply disappeared, stopped answering my calls as frequently, stopped sharing details of his life, stopped asking for help even when I knew he needed it. The last time I'd seen him was 9 months ago at my birthday dinner, a tense, awkward meal where he barely made eye contact and left before dessert. I pushed back from the table and walked to the bathroom, catching sight of myself in the mirror. 79 years old. When did I get old? My hair was white now, cut short for convenience. My face was lined with decades of stress and sleepless nights and public scrutiny. My hands that signed bills and shook hands with presidents and held my babies, looked fragile and spotted and unfamiliar. I was old and I was alone, and I'd spent my entire life believing that love would keep us together. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wandered the house like a ghost, turning on lights, opening doors, touching things. I found myself in the attic at 3 in the morning, pulling out boxes of photographs and Christmas cards and children's artwork. Evidence of a life I'd lived, proof that we'd once been happy. Marcus at 6, missing his front teeth, grinning at the camera in a Superman costume. Elena at 10, fierce even then, holding her first place science fair ribbon like a weapon. David at 15, all gangly limbs and uncertain smiles, paint smudged on his cheek. I found a letter Marcus had written me when he was 12, after I'd missed his birthday party for an emergency vote. "Dear Mom, I know you're busy saving the world, but I wish you could have been here. Dad said you're a hero. I guess that's true, but I miss you. Love, Marcus." I'd kept that letter in my desk drawer at the Capitol, read it during difficult moments when I questioned my choices. I told myself I was making the right sacrifices, that my children would understand someday, that they'd be proud of what I'd accomplished. Now I wondered if they'd just learn to live without me. A photo slipped from the box. The 5 of us, before their father died. Christmas morning. Everyone in matching pajamas that I'd insisted on despite the children's complaints. We looked happy, whole. I couldn't remember the last time we'd looked at each other like that, with genuine warmth instead of obligation. I pressed the photo to my chest and let myself cry. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd learned to produce during my husband's funeral and difficult political losses. These were ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal and broken. I cried for the mother I'd tried to be, for the children who'd grown into strangers, for all the moments I'd missed while trying to be important. When dawn broke, I was still sitting on the attic floor, surrounded by memories and ghosts, wondering if love had ever been enough. Stay with me. This story is just getting darker. Subscribe now and don't miss the rest of tonight's tale at 10 p.m. Christmas morning arrived with brutal brightness, fresh snow reflecting sunlight through my windows, the kind of perfect winter day that belonged in paintings and greeting cards. I stayed in bed until noon, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. No footsteps thundering down the stairs, no shrieks of excitement, no Marcus organizing everyone into an efficient present opening system, no Elena filming everything on her phone, no David making pancakes while singing off-key Christmas songs. Just silence. I finally forced myself out of bed and went downstairs. The tree lights were still on from the night before, blinking steadily, illuminating wrapped presents that no one would claim. I'd spent weeks choosing gifts. A leather briefcase for Marcus from a DC boutique he'd mentioned once, cashmere scarves for Elena in her favorite colors, professional art supplies for David, the expensive ones he couldn't afford. I sat on the floor in my rab boat and opened their gifts to me. Marcus had sent a gift basket from some corporate catalog: cheese, crackers, fancy jam. The card was printed, not handwritten. "Merry Christmas, Mom, M." Elena's was a spa gift certificate with a note: "Treat yourself, you deserve it." David's was a painting, one of his originals, a swirling abstract in blues and grays that felt like loneliness captured on canvas. No note at all. I held David's painting in my lap and understood finally what he'd been trying to tell me for years. This was how he saw the world now. This was how he saw us. Undefined shapes that used to fit together but had drifted into chaos. Beauty mixed with sadness, color drowning in shadow. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus: "Merry Christmas, hope you're having a nice day." Then Elena: "Merry Christmas, Mom, love you." Then David. A Christmas tree emoji. That's what I got from my youngest child. An emoji. I typed and deleted responses for 20 minutes. "I miss you." Delete. "Please come home." Delete. "Why don't you love me anymore?" Delete. Finally, I sent the same message to all three. "Merry Christmas, love always, Mom." None of them called. The days after Christmas blurred together. I stopped decorating. I stopped cooking. I stopped answering the phone when acquaintances called to ask about my holiday. What would I say? That I'd spent Christmas alone because my children had abandoned me? That I, Senator Shelly Ford, who'd built a career on family values, couldn't keep my own family intact? I started going through old journals, decades of entries documenting my life, my career, my motherhood. I'd been so proud of my ability to balance everything, to be both senator and mother, to prove that women could have it all. But reading back through the entries, I saw a different pattern emerging. Marcus's baseball game today. Missed it for the Appropriations Committee meeting. He'll understand. Elena's school concert tonight. Couldn't make it. Filibuster on healthcare bill. She knows it's important. David's art show opening. Conflict with fundraiser. He's always so understanding. Page after page of missed moments, justified absences, promises to make it up to them later. And they had been understanding, hadn't they? They'd grown up understanding that Mom's work was important, that other people needed her, that she was making a difference in the world. They'd understood so well that they'd learned not to need me anymore. I found Elena's college application essay in one of the boxes. She'd written about me, about being the daughter of a senator, about learning independence early. One line gutted me. "My mother taught me that love means letting people go do what matters most to them. I learned early that I wasn't always what mattered most." She'd gotten into Harvard with that essay. I'd been so proud. I'd never questioned what she actually meant. I called her that night, late after 2 glasses of wine. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Mom, it's 2 in the morning. Is everything okay?" "Why don't you come home anymore?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Why don't any of you come home?" A long pause. "Mom, we've talked about this." "No, we haven't. You make excuses, you avoid conversations, but we've never actually talked about why you can't spend one holiday with me." "Because it's hard." Her voice rose, frustration finally breaking through her usual controlled tone. "Being around you is hard, Mom. Do you know what it's like to never be enough for you? To spend your entire childhood competing with legislation and constituents and causes for your attention? I was trying to make a better world for you. We didn't need a better world. We needed you." Her voice cracked. "And now you're upset that we learned to live without you? That's what you taught us to do." She hung up. I called back 3 times. She didn't answer. Chapter 9. Marcus's Truth. I called Marcus the next day. He answered on the 2nd ring, as he always did, efficient as ever. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?" "No." My voice was steady, cold, senatorial. "We're going to talk now." A sigh. Hold on. I heard him excusing himself. Footsteps, a door closing. Okay, what's this about? Why did you stop coming home for Christmas? I told you, work. Stop lying to me, Marcus. You're a partner now. You can take time off if you want to. So why don't you want to? Another long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, more honest. Do you remember my law school graduation? Of course, I was so proud. You weren't there. The words cut like a knife. I spent 4 years barely sleeping, studying until 3 in the morning, graduating at the top of my class, and you weren't there. Do you know what that feels like? To achieve something huge and look into the audience and not see your mother? I thought you understood. I did understand, Mom. That's the problem. I understood that your work was more important than me, that it always would be. So I built a life where I didn't need you anymore, where I didn't need anyone. And honestly, it's easier this way. Marcus, please. I have to get back to my meeting. His voice had gone flat again, professional. I'll call you this weekend. Maybe. He didn't. David was the hardest to reach because he barely answered his phone anymore. I tried for 3 days straight before he finally picked up. He sounded exhausted. Mom? David, sweetheart, I need to talk to you. I can't do this right now. I'm in the middle of... Please. I hated how desperate I sounded, but I couldn't stop. Please just talk to me. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me how to fix this. I heard him breathing, long and slow. You can't fix it, Mom. That's what you never understand. Not everything can be fixed with legislation or determination or throwing money at it. What does that mean? It means I spent my entire childhood feeling like a disappointment to you, like I was the wrong kind of kid for Senator Shelly Ford. Marcus was brilliant, Alina was fierce, and I was just soft, artistic, too sensitive, not tough enough for the world you lived in. I never thought that you didn't have to say it. I felt it every time you looked at me, every time you explained to your colleagues that I was finding my path, every time you apologized for not being more successful. His voice wavered. Do you know how many times I heard you tell people I was figuring things out with that sad, disappointed tone, like I was a problem you were waiting to solve? David, I loved you exactly as you were. No, you didn't. You loved who you thought I could become if I just tried harder. And I spent 30 years trying to be that person, trying to make you proud, until I finally realized I was killing myself for someone else's dream. He took a shaky breath. I stopped coming home because every time I'm there, I remember how much I hated myself when I lived with you, and I can't go back to that. I'm sorry, but I can't. The line went quiet. Then, I have to go, Mom. Take care of yourself. He hung up. I called back. The phone went straight to voicemail. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror for a long time, really looking at myself. Not the senator, not the mother, not the image I'd carefully curated for public consumption. Just Lily. Just me. I was 79 years old. I'd served my country, fought for causes I believed in, made a real difference in thousands of lives. I'd passed legislation that helped children, protected families, and funded education. I'd been profiled in magazines, interviewed on national television, respected by colleagues and constituents alike. And I'd lost my children. Not through death or distance or circumstances beyond my control. I'd lost them through 1,000 small choices. Choosing work over soccer games, choosing causes over art shows, choosing the world over the 3 people who needed me most. I told myself I was teaching them independence, strength, resilience, but really I just taught them that they'd never be my priority. Elena was right. Being around me was hard because I'd never learned to just be their mother. I'd always been trying to teach them something, mold them into something, push them towards success as I defined it. I loved them fiercely, desperately, but I'd loved them on my terms, and my terms required them to understand why I was always leaving, always busy, always choosing something else. I thought about all the times I'd said, "You understand, right?" after missing something important, and they nodded because good children do. They'd learned to swallow their disappointment, to make themselves smaller, to need me less, and I'd mistaken their adaptation for maturity, their survival mechanism for support. I'd been so busy being Senator Doris that I'd forgotten to be mom. The realization didn't bring catharsis or clarity. It brought bone-deep exhaustion. Because I couldn't go back. I couldn't undo 30, 40, 50 years of choices. I couldn't resurrect the moments I'd missed or erase the times they needed me and I wasn't there. I couldn't fix this. For the first time in my life, I faced a problem I couldn't solve through determination or strategy or sheer force of will. This was just done. Over. A chapter of my life that had ended badly, and all I had left was the aftermath. I crawled into bed and lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, each creak and groan a reminder of how much space 3 people's absence could occupy. On New Year's Eve, I wrote 3 letters, one to each of my children. I wrote them by hand, in cursive, on the good stationery I'd saved for important correspondence. I wrote them without editing, without trying to sound senatorial or wise or anything other than honest. Dear Marcus, you were right about your graduation. I should have been there. The summit could have waited. You couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the times I chose work over you. I'm sorry for teaching you that love means understanding absence rather than demanding presence. I'm sorry for making you compete with the world for my attention, and I'm sorry you lost. You turned out brilliant and successful and strong, but you also turned out lonely, and I think that's partly my fault. You learned from me that achievement matters more than connection, that work matters more than people. I was wrong to teach you that. I know you've built a life without me now. I know it's easier for you this way. I understand, and I'm not asking you to change anything. I'm just saying I'm sorry. I love you. I'm proud of you, not for what you've achieved, but for surviving everything I put you through. Love always, Mom. I cried while writing Elena's letter. She'd been my fighter, my fierce girl, the one who'd inherited my stubbornness and determination. I'd pushed her hard because I'd seen so much of myself in her, but I'd never stopped to ask if that's who she wanted to be. Dear Elena, you wrote in your college essay that you learned love means letting people go do what matters most to them. I read that essay again last week, and I finally understood what you were really saying. You were saying I chose other things over you. You were saying you raised yourself. You were saying you had to learn not to need me because I was never reliably there. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry for making you independent before you were ready. I'm sorry for treating your emotional needs as weakness to overcome rather than vulnerability to nurture. I'm sorry for applauding your toughness when maybe what you needed was someone to let you be soft sometimes. You don't owe me anything, not visits, not phone calls, not forgiveness. You owe yourself peace. If that means keeping distance from me, I understand. Just know that I love you, and I'm sorry I didn't love you better when it mattered most. Love always, Mom. David's letter was the hardest. My sensitive boy, my artist, the one I'd failed most completely because I'd never understood how to love someone so different from me. Dear David, you said I loved who you could become more than who you were. You were right. I spent your whole childhood trying to toughen you up, help you fit in, encourage you to be more practical. I thought I was protecting you from a harsh world, but I was actually teaching you that who you were wasn't enough, that you needed to change to earn my approval. I was wrong. You were perfect as you were. Sensitive, artistic, gentle, kind. Those weren't flaws to overcome, they were gifts. But I was too blind and too rigid to see that. I know you can't come home because being here reminds you of hating yourself. That breaks my heart, because my home should have been your sanctuary, not your prison. But I understand, and I want you to know, you don't have to be anything other than exactly who you are. You never did. You're not a disappointment. You never were. I was just too limited in my understanding of what success looks like. Your art is beautiful. Your heart is beautiful. You are enough. Love always, Mom. I sealed the letters and addressed them. Then I sat with them for an hour, wondering if I should send them at all. Would they change anything? Probably not. But maybe they needed to be written anyway. Maybe some apologies are less about seeking forgiveness and more about accepting responsibility. I mailed them on January 2nd. 3 weeks later, I got a text from David. Just 2 words. Thank you. Marcus never responded. Alina called a month later and said we could try talking again, but she needed time. I told her to take all the time she needed. I stopped keeping their rooms ready. I donated most of their childhood belongings to charity: the debate trophies, the snow globes, the old canvases. I kept a few photographs, packed carefully in a box in my closet. The rest, I let go. I joined a grief support group at the community center, not for death, but for loss. Loss of relationships, loss of the future you'd imagined, loss of people who were still alive but no longer in your life. I sat in circles with other people whose children had stopped calling, whose marriages had ended, whose friends had drifted away. We didn't offer solutions, we just witnessed each other's pain. I started volunteering at a homeless shelter, serving meals, organizing donations. I gave the love I couldn't give my children to strangers who needed it. And some days it almost felt like enough. On Christmas Eve, I decorated a small tree, just 4 feet tall, simple ornaments, white lights. I made kolachki, but only one batch, the kind I liked best. I ate dinner alone again, but this time I didn't set places for ghosts. This time I lit a single candle and made peace with the silence. I thought about my children often. I hoped they were happy. I hoped they'd found peace. I hoped that someday, maybe, we could sit in the same room again without all the weight of our history crushing us. But I didn't need that anymore. I'd learned to exist without that hope driving every thought. I'd spent 79 years believing that love meant holding on, fighting, never giving up. But maybe sometimes love means letting go. Maybe sometimes love means accepting that you hurt people even when you didn't mean to, that good intentions aren't enough, that you can't always fix what you've broken. Maybe sometimes love means saying, I'm sorry, I understand, I release you, be happy. That night, I sat by my small tree and sipped tea and watched the snow fall outside my window. The house was quiet, but it wasn't haunted anymore. It was just a house, and I was just a woman who'd made mistakes and lost people and survived anyway. I was alone, but I was free, and somehow, on this Christmas, that was enough. I learned something that winter. You can love people with your whole heart and still lose them. Not all stories end with reconciliation. Some end with acceptance, with peace, with the quiet understanding that you did your best, it wasn't enough, and you can survive that truth. Barely, but you can. If this story touched you, stay with me for the next one. Subscribe, like, share it with someone who would feel it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. My 10 p.m. stories, one story every night at 10 p.m.